Today is Thursday, November the 13th, 2014. We are interviewing Mr. Richard Dominguez at the Whittier Library in Whittier, California. Mr. Dominguez is 90 years old, having been born on June 27th, 1924. My name is Dee Fujiasco, and I'll be doing the interview. Assisting me is Nancy Connor. This interview is being done on behalf of the Los Angeles Region Greater Long Beach Chapter of the American Red Cross, in conjunction with the Library of Congress and the American Folklife Center. Mr. Dominguez served in the Army during World War II as Master Sergeant, as well as in Korea. First and foremost, I want to thank you for your time and service, Richard.
Oh, you're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, and a little about your early childhood.
Okay. I was born in Los Angeles in June 27, 1924. I just turned 90 this year and had a big birthday party by my family. And the area that I was born in is called Boyle Heights. It's just east of Los Angeles, the river, across the river. And at that time, it was a kind of an entry point, people coming from out of the country or immigrants. My parents were immigrants from Mexico. They met in Los Angeles and they got married in Los Angeles and raised their family there. And our neighborhood was centered, at least where I lived, it was centered around our church called La Purísima, a little parish church, a small wooden building. It was in a area of about 6 square blocks, and that was our neighborhood. And I come from a family of 10 boys. My parents had 10 boys, no girls, and I'm third in line of the family. There's 3 brothers are deceased. My oldest brother died after World War II. He picked up some germs or diseases in the South Pacific, and he died in 1956. My second brother was a Marine, and he died in action in Saipan in the Pacific. And a third, my brother, that's after me, Francisco, was a Catholic priest. He was not in the service, he was a Catholic priest. He was a priest for 35 or some years, and he died early. He died at an early age, had a heart attack, and he was assigned to a missionary group in Mexico City. And he died over there, and he's buried over there in Mexico City. The other brothers are still living. Some of them are local here, and one lives out of state, lives in Florida. But we see each other still, and have a lot of cousins and nephews. And growing up was quite an experience. We always had one of the grandmas around. My grandmother or my great-grandmother, that was mother and daughter. They would live with us for a while, or one or the other, and then they would go from house to house, not necessarily house to house, but they would stay with their sons or a nephew, because they were both widows. We want to talk about our growing up and childhood.
What did your dad do?
Big part.
What was your father's livelihood? What did he do?
Okay. My father was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. He immigrated into Arizona. I have his. Somebody researched the papers. I have his papers where he crossed the border, and they went to live in Arizona, because his stepfather was a miner, a copper miner. That in Arizona, they've had a lot of people came from Mexico to work the mines. Copper mines, pretty much, basically that's what it was there. So he was there for a few years. He has a half-brother from his stepfather. And then an uncle of mine, from my grandmother's side, her brother, he came to Los Angeles and he found work here. And he got involved with some people from the movie industry. So he told them back there in Arizona, he says, come to Los Angeles. there's a lot of work to be done here, and you have good opportunities. So my father and grandmother and my uncle moved to Los Angeles, and sure enough, at that time was the early years of production in the movies. They didn't have really big studios. They'd film outdoors all the time, and the plaza, whenever they needed Mexican people or atmosphere, the plaza, the church, or the Chinatown, that was there, a little bit of a Chinatown, they would come down there, and my uncle got involved with them, and they hired him as an interpreter to hire people on the street. So my dad started working in the movies, and at that time, and he worked all his life in the movie industry. He supported 10 children through that. And we also worked, when we were kids, all of us worked in the movies, and I did some work in the movies after I got out of the war, World War II, and until I got married, and I gave it up because we had a work permit. You had to have a work permit. And if I may show you a picture of this is a movie of Tarzan. Lex Barker was Tarzan at that time. They had a lot of Tarzans in Hollywood, and I'm the guard right in front of him. This movie was called The Fountain of Youth. Briefly, the story was that there was a tribe of all these people that show in there, and eternal youth, and this older couple wanted to go there and get young again or live forever. But so that was that movie. But I worked in a lot of movies for a couple of years until I got married. But as kids, we worked all the time. We all had permits, and that helped our income, also helped the family income to support the family. But as you get to be like about 13, 14, 15, then you're not a little kid anymore. But the kids running around in the background, you see them playing in the movie. They were crossing the street or playing or being in a classroom. All of my brothers worked as extras.
Mm-hmm. So where did you go to school?
Okay, I went to school in the local school in our neighborhood. It was 2 blocks away, Euclid Avenue School, located there on Whittier and Euclid. And I went to when I got to I went to 7th grade. My parents were able to send me to Catholic elementary school. My brothers started in the 7th grade as well as I did, because until they had enough money for tuition, they weren't able to send them. But after myself, all the rest of my brothers started at another local school and went through Catholic school. I was I guess I broke the chain. I went to Catholic school, and then I went to Cathedral High School, which is by downtown LA near Chinatown. And I went there 2 years, and I was influenced by bad company. Some of my friends, hey, come on to the local come down to the public high school. We have a lot of fun here, a lot of girls here, and we can, you get by real easy. So I did. My mother let me transfer, and I joined the ROTC. I like the military. I joined the ROTC at Roosevelt High School, which is there in Boyle Heights. And the rest of my brothers all went to Cathedral, and St. Mary's and Cathedral. Mm-hmm. And there was a local school that was right by there. And I asked my mother later on in years, how come you let me go to the public school? And she said, well, son, I knew that I could trust you. You're a good boy, and you wouldn't get into any trouble. So.
Well, did you get into any trouble?
No, I got fired out of the ROTC though.
Oh no! How did you do that?
Well, I got into a fight, and it got reported back to the captain, and I was fired. Well, then I wasn't fired, but I had a little rank of a corporal, and they took that away. And then the next year, I did not continue with the ROTC.
So that happened in your junior year?
I liked the military.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that was another story, but about how I joined the National Guard too. But and then after high school, I wanted to join the Air Corps. Well, it's called the Air Corps at that time. It was it was part of the Army.
What year was that?
And I graduated in summer 42. I had started I went for an exam for the physical for the Air Corps, and I didn't pass because I had a problem with my left eye. It was they call it a muscular imbalance of some kind. So my mother found out about them, that I could go over to the USC, University of Southern California, to their eye department or their medical school, but eye with optometry or optometry school, I guess. Anyway, they tested me, and I started going there, but every couple of weeks and do some eye exercises. I did that for quite a while. But I also signed up and enrolled in a night school class to prepare for the Air Force, or Air Corps. It was Air Corps at that time. And I was going to attending some classes. So when my time came to be drafted, I was given a deferment, 6 months deferment. And after those 6 months, I was given another deferment because I was still going to school. But by the time that I got drafted in summer 42, I stayed out a year after high school. Mm-hmm. My friends, most of my friends of my age had already been drafted, and they went to different camps.
What were you taking in school? What kind of subjects?
I was taking geometry and some science classes and algebra and meteorology, that kind of stuff.
And was there something you were going for as far as a degree?
Well,
or?
I wanted to be a flyer. To fly in the Air Corps,
Uh-huh.
I have to have a pretty big background.
So you need to have all this to be a flyer.
That was the starter. That was the beginning. In the service, I later attended some other classes, but I'll get to that. But
okay.
So at that time, after a year, I was out on deferment. Then my time came up, and I was drafted. So I graduated in summer 1943. And I was sent from, I went to Camp MacArthur here in San Pedro. And then a couple of weeks later, we were shipped out of LA, out of the Union Station, and on the train, and we didn't know where we were going, but.
Can you just go back a little bit? Tell me about what boot camp was like.
Boot camp?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Was it like a typical day in boot camp?
Well, yeah, we were sent to this trainload of GIs from LA area, I guess, but we went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is the home of the field artillery. When we got there, it was kind of interesting. When we got there, they said, everybody get out there in the field. Well, there was some people, those sergeants out there, and they said, the bigger guys went that way and the smaller guys this way. And so then after they did that, we took us to our barracks. And so we'll come to find out that the little guys, or the smaller guys, were selected to train with artillery, but with the ones you pull, the big guns. They pull them with a truck, and they get out there and they do their thing. The bigger guys, I guess, like I thought, I was a pretty good sized kid, but skinny, but tall for a Mexican. And so the tall guys, we ended up what they call the mule pack. And this was a special unit that we trained with mules. We had a small howitzer, 35 millimeter howitzer, that broke down, take it apart, pack it on the mules, and go. And they used it in the jungles, and they used it in Italy, in the mountains in Italy. And it was a small cannon, maybe this long, or altogether, but it could. Then you carry the shells. Everything goes on mules, all supplies and all the food, and we trained for that for a few months there. That was basic training. To get up early, we have to. I'd never been around animals like that. We had to know how to take care of them, comb them down, wash them, feed them, check their hoofs, and also take care of the harness, the leather work. Mm-hmm. That was a tedious job because that leather was all the straps and stuff was very thick leather, but it was old, many years old. But because every day you have to use it, you have to saddle soap it and keep it pliable and soft.
Uh-huh.
And we had to guard the areas where the barns where the mules were, 24-hour guard. It was at night anyway, at night. But we trained by going into packing up breaking down the cannon, put it on the mules, and going out in the field and hiking, going up and down hills. The mules could go, when they went down a hill or slope, you get in the back, somebody had to get in the back and hold their tail so they wouldn't swerve their butt, stay on the trail.
Interesting.
That was hard work, but that's why they wanted bigger guys and stronger guys.
So they could handle it, right, exactly.
And the other guys, the little guys were riding the truck on the way out to where they were going to fire the guns. But it was an experience. I'd never been around. I hadn't been out of California. The first train ride I ever had, and got to meet some good guys all around. There was only one guy on the train that I knew from school. All the rest were from California, but they had been at Fort MacArthur. But while we're there in camp, you get acquainted with the guys you're living in the barracks with. You get up early in the morning, reveille, and that Fort Sill was an old camp from the days of the West. They had the cavalry. That was what it was. Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So while I was there, I applied for the Air Corps, and I was accepted. I had a physical. My eye was okay, and I only stayed there about 4 or 5 months, 6 months, or about the most.
How long were you, so this was at Fort Sill while you were training for the 4 months, or?
Yeah, training.
Okay.
So I got transferred into the Air Corps, this is a symbol of the Air Corps at that time. It was part of the Army, and not the Air Force. It was the Air Corps. And so we got sent to Texas to a base, and then assigned to a school. They had these college training detachments, which the men, there weren't any women at that time. We didn't have any women in our group. The men that were going to Air Corps training, or to be a flyer or bombardier or engineer or a meteorologist, whatever you're going to do, they were sent to college to take college courses. And they had several of these colleges all over the United States where these groups of men went. Well, I was sent to Arizona State Teachers College in Tempe. And, it was all new. We were in uniform. We had a barracks. Well, we lived in the dorms, actually. But there was a small squadron, small groups of men. We were the last ones in. But the ladies, well, there was all ladies in those days. Men, I don't think there was too many men going to be becoming teachers in those days. It was all ladies, young ladies. So that was a good part of it. We went to some of their dances they had. But we go to class every day. Go to class in the morning, take a break for lunch, go back to class.
What year was this?
This was in 44,
44, okay.
44. They were regular college courses and professors from there. And then the idea was to prepare you for your future, whatever you're going to do. You didn't know what you were going to be yet, what role you would play in the Air Corps. But we also had, we all had 10 hours of flying instruction in a Piper Cub, a little one-prop little thing, and out of Phoenix. There's an airport in Phoenix, and I got to have 10 hours. I still have my log that the instructor writes down. We went 1 hour at a time, and we learned I never flew solo, but we learned to fly and land and take off, and it was good. But so what happened? They had too many of these classes going on. They needed men in Europe. The war in Europe was escalating, so they pulled out out of all these schools, for as far as I knew, they pulled in the last ones out. I mean, the first ones that were there stayed. They pulled out the last couple of classes out of there, and our class was one of them. So we had to go back to the regular Army stuff. That's when I got sent to Texas in the armored infantry. And this is the, where's that patch from the armored infantry? This one. 13th Armored Division was a new division that was starting up in tanks and anti-tank guns, armored divisions, what it is. You see the half-track and striking, the lightning. And, so we trained as rookies. We learned to shoot the big guns that were anti-tank guns, firing it's a 80 millimeter. It's enough to penetrate a tank or knock out the tracks. And so that was in training. And while there, 44, I guess, was... I forgot to tell you, but my brothers, my two older brothers, joined the Marines right after the war. They joined in 42, and they trained in Camp Pendleton, and then they went to Hawaii and were part of the 4th Marine Division. Their home base was Hawaii. And they participated in the battles of, the islands around the Marianas, which is Roy, Namur. They came back and they rested up, got prepared again, got their equipment. They went again on another island, which was Saipan. And they were not together in the same unit. They were in the same unit, but not in the same company. My older brother was... he got into the headquarters company, and the younger, older brother than mine, but he's a younger. There was two older brothers. He was a rifleman, or a BAR man, Browning automatic rifle. Well, they fought in the Battle of Saipan. He was wounded, but he was a slight wound, but then he went back on duty. And while the island had pretty much been cleared up of Saipan, and him and another fellow buddy were on patrol along the beach. This is a story that his partner told my brother. And the story is that they were walking along the beach just on patrol, and the jungle was off to one side, and out of the jungle, a sniper fired at them and killed my brother. And he died right there in the arms of his buddy there. And then later, my older brother helped to bury him on Saipan. And then, but after the war, my parents requested, or the Army, the Marines asked if you want your deceased remains brought back, and they agreed to that. And he's buried at Fort Rosecrans in San Diego, in a military cemetery there. So in the meantime, I was at camp in Texas on the artillery when I got notice that he was killed, and I had a telegram, and so I wanted to, just thinking I wanted to do something, get involved in the combat, or so I could avenge my brother. That was my thinking. But so I joined the paratroopers. I applied, and I was accepted, and was sent from there to Fort Benning, Georgia, for training.
And what year was this?
And that was in 44.
Still in 44, okay.
The training was only 5 or 6 weeks, actually. Mm-hmm. You have 5 weeks, you have to make 5, it's a little more than 5 weeks, actually. You make 5 jumps to earn your wings. So I along with a lot of other guys, passed. It was tough training. That the paratrooper, that's the toughest training I've ever had. Besides civilian life, I joined the police department, but that was pretty tough training at the paratroopers. You have to learn all the basics and you had to know how to roll up your parachute. Not roll it up, but fold it.
Mm-hmm.
So
How many were in that class that you were in?
In the class,
for the paratroopers.
11, probably about 40 in a class, something like that, I think. But I made the 5 jumps, and then we got the wings. These aren't the original wings, but that's awarded your wings. And then this is a airborne symbol of the airborne. And it was tough, and we were considered elite troops. And well, of course, we always we were able to wear boots, certain kind of boots, and lace them up with some leather thongs, and a little different. You blouse your pants, and that was supposedly a trademark of the paratroopers. Well, so I was given a leave of a furlough, came home for a little bit, and went back, and then we were sent to Fort Meade, Maryland.
What was it like to be on leave? That was your first time on leave?
No, that was the second time, actually.
Okay.
Second time. I got out of leave before I went to the armored infantry.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to leave, and but then we went to Fort Meade, Maryland, ready to go to Europe, and this was in the late part of the year. So we were given shots and winter clothing because it was November, December. We were going to go to Europe someplace. We don't know where. Well, we're only there 2 weeks at the most, 3 weeks, and orders came out. And you see your name, all these men report to so-and-so, and so we were shipped out of there to go to Camp McCall, North Carolina, to a airborne training center. So here we go again.
Doing a lot of training.
Right. So, but the idea was that they trained in a smaller group as a regiment, not a whole division, a small group like a strike force. It was a new concept, I guess, but we didn't know that much about it really because we're still rookie paratroopers. So we went to training there for 6 months or so, and did some more jumps there and maneuvers and that kind of thing. But paratroopers are a special breed. They're very loyal to each other and protective of each other. And we always thought we were better than the other soldiers, but that was just in your own mind. So we finished the training there, and then we were going to go overseas. So I got another leave, and I went home pretty proud with my wings. And by that time, all the guys were gone. My age guy, they were gone, and so we went to go dancing, or that was kind of thing to do. We like to dance a lot. And
how did your family take to you being in the military and coming home with all the accomplishments?
They were happy that I was still around here. The other 2 brothers were overseas. One had died already, and there was the age of the next one after me was a few years younger, so he was not eligible to be drafted or anything like that. It's the one that became a priest, the one after me. But they were concerned about me having to go overseas. So that was we got the last leave, and then we boarded some trains with all our equipment we took and went across country to here to California, to Pittsburgh, California, where we waited a few days or a week or so, and we shipped out of there to go to the Pacific. And that was in 45, in June of 45. We traveled to the Philippines, and that's where we were, after we were there, we were still on the ship, actually. And then orders came out, and they said that they have these orders, and he said, we became replacements for the 11th Airborne, who had been in combat, had been there and fighting. They had made some jumps there. They had been in combat. They had gotten a good reputation of a fighting group. So they had lost men, wounded or killed. So our guys became part of the 11th Airborne. And I have a patch from them. Here it is, the 11th Airborne patch. That's a division.
Just have you move your arm down just a little
Uh-huh.
bit. There we go. Okay.
And so once again, I was only there a month actually when they dropped the bomb. That was in August of 45. They dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, and then the second bomb on Nagasaki. Well, as soon as right after that happened, one afternoon they called us out of the field again. All our guys from our division, or our company anyway. And here again, some officers and sergeants came by and pointing out individuals, taking their names down. And they said, okay, you guys whose name they took, pack up your duffel bag, you're leaving. And so we got our stuff together, and that afternoon or evening, we flew out of there in some cargo planes and flew to Okinawa. But we didn't know what was going to happen. So we were in Okinawa. We were there for 2 or 3 days, and we slept on the ground with our duffel bags. And Okinawa had been there had been some very fierce fighting against the enemy, the Americans and the Japanese, and not only the Americans but the Navy also. And they had just taken it over. Okinawa is still about 500 miles from Japan, but that's where we were staging area. So we still didn't know what was going to happen. So we were there 3 or 4 days. That's it. We loaded the planes again, and we flew into an airfield called Atsugi outside of Yokohama. And we were loaded on some, they had these vehicles, the Japanese vehicles. They were all rickety and old, but they were still running. Some of them were running on a steam engine, like steam, or artificial fuel. But we got in. We were our full combat gear, and they drove us into Yokohama, into the hotel. Well, outside the hotel. The hotel was a very fancy old-time hotel from the old days, and called the Grand Hotel in Yokohama. And it was very interesting to see this on the road, on the highway that we were traveling to Yokohama. Along the highway, there were Japanese soldiers in full gear, with their backs to the road. They were on the edge of the road, but they had the backs to the road we were on, with rifles and everything. And we said, well, they're guarding us in case there's some kind of an uprising or something. That's what we didn't know. But all the way into town, there was Japanese soldiers. Well, we got into town. We found out that we were what we had to do. Our duty was to guard General MacArthur's house, guard the building, the hotel, the whole perimeter of the hotel. So that was our job for about a week or so, 10 days before they signed the surrender terms. General MacArthur was housed in a home that had been the home of the president of Standard Oil Company. Big mansion, a lot of plantings and a lot of trees and bushes around the place, a big house. And next door was another house just as big and beautiful house, but it was MacArthur's house was furnished. The guards were put into this house next door, which belonged to the vice president of Standard Oil. It was a big mansion too, but there was no furniture at all. But we found little boxes of screws and nuts and bolts, I think they were using it for manufacturing in that house. They're doing something or assembling something. So we found those things, but we slept there, and they had a little. They set up a little cooking shack in the back, and we guarded his house. We guarded the whole perimeter, and then every day some of the fellows had to go guard the hotel, and every day, day and night, the dignitaries, not the dignitaries so much, but the Allied troops, commanders and generals in the different countries, Australian, English, French, they come in and out of the building. That's MacArthur was there. But every day, a couple of times I got to guard his front door. And he comes out and he says, "Good morning, soldier." And we're saluting. And "Good morning, sir." Or if he came back in, he'd always greet you. But he never asked me any questions about what should I do about this the peace treaty. He never asked me anything like that.
But did say good morning to you. That's a lot right there.
Right
wow.
there, yeah. And the duty lasted about, I don't recall exactly, but a week or 10 days, something like that. And then they had to sign the treaty, the surrender. We took him, we escorted him down to the docks of Yokohama. And he got off and he was put onto a small Navy boat, and they took him out to the USS Missouri, which was in the harbor. And in the harbor were other ships of other countries, and of course service people along the docks from all the different branches of not the branches, but the different countries. But none of us got to go on a board ship. That was the end of our duty. But for a couple more days, and we left.
So did you do any jumping at all while you were over there?
No, because they didn't have a school yet. They had to. We were occupation troops then.
Yeah.
But what they did was occupation was we went to a camp in northern Honshu, which is a town called Sendai. That's where they had that big tidal wave a couple of years ago. Sendai, in Japan. It's a big city north of Tokyo, and they were disarming. They were finding arms around the countryside, ammunition, not rifles so much, but artillery shells, a lot of different kinds. Well, they would load them into the trains. The trains would come in there into Sendai, the flat cars from different parts of around that area. And they would take them out to the harbor, and then they would be put on some boats, and they would dump them at sea, out at sea. All this ammo, live ammo. And we were staying at we had barracks that were Japanese barracks, but the place that we were guarding was stables. And they had, at one time, they had cavalry troops there. And they had some of the barns were filled with bayonets and rifles, and I don't know why I didn't get a souvenir. But I did. I said, just put everything on. We got to get rid of everything. So I never did. I didn't bring anything home at that time. But so that was so we spent a little time there. Got to walk around the town a little bit. But whenever you walk around the town, the people shy away from you and get out of your way. After a while, it was different. I went back a couple years later when I went back to the 40th Division. The 40th. Then it was a little different, but at this time they were. Oh, and there was a lot of damage around there. And Yokohama, especially, they dropped a lot of fire bombs. The Allied troop or the U.S. troops, the U.S. Air Corps, dropped fire bombs. And for blocks and blocks, it'd be like they were just the foundations of the houses, foundations. Some of their housing was flimsy. I mean, not flimsy, but straw walls, and but a lot of devastation. But it was cleaned up a little bit. In Sendai, we didn't see that much. There was no. I don't think there was any. Maybe the docks had been bombed, but we didn't see that. So I was there I got out of there in March or April. My time was up. They go by points. how long you been in the service and how long you served in overseas. And so my time came up in about March or April, and
Of what year was this?
what year? 46.
46, okay.
And so we got out, came home back to California, Fort MacArthur, and then was discharged.
Okay.
So
that was in 1946.
yes, ma'am, that was the end of that story.
Uh-huh. And you went home from there?
Yeah, my parents had moved to another house, and so they were, it was just in the same area, but a different house. And I was out for almost a year. Well, I was out for a year. Oh, they gave us, the government, we would collect like unemployment, $20 a day, once a month. So, $20. That's when I started working in the movies.
Uh-huh.
I had my
What was it like to
permit.
come home after the war? How was your welcome home, and how did you adjust?
Well, it was, of course, it was glad to be home. And of course, the parents were also overjoyed to have me back home. And my other brother he was home already, the older brother.
Mm-hmm.
He had been married, and so he was with his wife, but living nearby. It was good to get back to see your friends again, the old buddies you grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them didn't come back. Some were killed in the war. Some were wounded. One of our good buddies in my age group that we grew, we knew each other from childhood, from the same neighborhood. Went all the way through high school. He lost both his legs above the knees in a tank. He was a tank man, and he was in a tank, and a shell hit the tank and zoomed around inside, and he lost both his legs. But he came home and got married, and had a very he was married already when we got home, because he was in hospital in the United States, or in Utah someplace. But he had artificial limbs, and the services, the Veterans Association, or veterans helped him with artificial legs, and having a car that has some levers, you could, instead of the feet, leverages. So he was the only guy with a car, and then he was the only guy with a TV. So
That was new stuff back then anyway.
yeah, the guys that are close friends, we all go visit him just to watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
All the time we're over there, nobody else had TVs, and one day finally his wife he told him, "I'm tired of seeing these guys around here. Why don't you get them out of here? I don't want them around here no more." Because we were there all the time. And okay, we'll leave.
What was your rank when you were discharged?
What was what?
What was your rank when you were discharged from the Army?
I was a sergeant, a black sergeant in charge of a machine gun squad.
Okay.
That I got from when we were in Camp McCall.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my duty at that time, was a sergeant of a machine gun squad.
Did you win any awards, any medals, any ribbons?
Well, they give you. I was not in any battles when we got to the Philippines. The war was over in 1 month, and they were the unit we joined was resting. They gave you the. I had the Philippine Liberation Medal and the good conduct. I was a good guy.
They didn't talk about your ROTC day, huh?
And overseas, there's an overseas award. So then I came home, and that's when I started working in the movies. And I showed you this picture. Did I show you this
Yes, you
picture?
did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I got married.
Oh, okay.
That was a good occasion. I was married for 50 years, actually. We made 50 years.
How did you meet your wife?
This is my wife right here.
Okay.
Very beautiful young lady at the time.
And where did you meet her?
Oh, well, actually, we met through, our parents knew each other. Our parents knew each other from early years. well, when we were I know what it was. We were still kids, but it was a mutual friend of it. Was a relative, and they got to know each other. I have a picture. I don't have it here, but we have a little photograph which shows at these people's house. It was some kind of a party, and all the adults are lined up, and there's some little kids in front. And she's in there, and so am I, because her parents were there, and so were my parents. But we didn't know it. I didn't remember that. But so her mother actually was active with the USO. She started a unit of Latino mothers to go to the canteen in Hollywood and have like a Latin night. They would make Mexican food, and with the soldiers come in. And my wife was she worked for she didn't work. She volunteered with the USO.
Oh, okay.
So she would be there whenever they were their assignment, and they'd have dances. We always went to the USO whenever town we were in. That was always a place to go because you get some free meals and also refreshments, and they usually have a dance of some kind. But she did that, and she also, my wife also, before we were married, this was during the war, she sang with a band, and she was involved in fundraisers. At that time, they used to sell war bonds and war stamps. I don't have it here with me, but there's a picture showing her in Pershing Square, dressed up in a Mexican costume, and she was singing there and selling bonds. There was a big crowd there. But she was a professional singer with a band when I met her, and that's how we met at a dance, actually. But we knew we had our parents knew each other, but we got to meet at a dance, and a good occasion. Beautiful woman, and she would go to sometimes they'd take them in buses to some army camps that were around Los Angeles. They'd take young ladies out there to mix with the servicemen, have a dance. That's what they did, and. So like I said, she worked at the USO downtown in L.A., the Hollywood canteen. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
And I don't have a picture here with me, but I have a picture of her being at that canteen with a serviceman. So we met at a dance that we had a club from our church. Again, the guys that came back got together back at our church because they were still in the same neighborhood. And we had a young man's club, adult club, and we had a softball team, and we played football with the city leagues, and we'd have dances to raise money. So we hired her band one time. So they were at this hall, and my parents had gone to the dance too. They liked to dance. They were still young, fairly young, and they would go there and. A couple of times they were there at this evening. So I saw this girl sitting up there on the stage with the band, attractive lady and a real nice voice, and I said, wow, what a nice looking lady, young lady. So I'd be dancing away, and then during one of the intermissions, I saw that she was over there talking with my parents in the back of the hall. I said, oh, I wonder who's that? So I went over there and oh, this is my son. They introduced me to her, and they told me that they knew her parents, and so I said, wow, what a nice meeting. So that was our meeting, and that resulted in later on our getting together and getting married and raising the family.
Wow.
So that was how we met.
So what year did you get married?
We got married in June of 49. So June of 49. I was on it, so I had, I started going to school, East LA Junior College. At that time, what seems to be a good profession for a Latino was at least in our estimation, was a playground director. Because growing up, we hung out at the playgrounds. And I knew a couple of guys that were Latino guys, and And so I said, that would be a good profession. So I enrolled at East LA College. And then at the same time, a few months later, I signed up. They were advertising for police officers at LAPD. So I made an application, took the test. And while I was in school the first semester, I got a notice saying you had been accepted. If you want to continue, send us a letter back or notify us. Well, I was in the middle of classes and I didn't want to do that, so I let it go by. But in the meantime, we were seeing each other, and I completed the one semester. Then in the fall, started up again in September. I was back in school. And then a month or so later, or two later, I got another notice that says you're still eligible to enter the police department. You're interested. So I gave it some thought, and I decided I want to join the police department, Los Angeles Police Department. So I notified them, and I got called in. I got assigned to the class in November the 1st of 1948. And it was a 5 or 6 week, about 5 or 6 weeks class training session. Well, I told my fiancée that, we were already engaged. I said, I want to get married. Well, that's when I proposed, I guess. And I said, but I have to see if I pass probation first, 6 months probation. If I pass probation, then we can get married. If not, we'll have to start again, try something else. So I went to the academy, training academy, and I was the only Mexican American out of 75 cadets. I was the only one at that time. But it was a tough course. I mean, the training and all that had to do with training. But they cut our training short because it was Christmas. It's November, and then December, they sent us downtown. At that time, they used to have traffic officers, traffic cops on the street corners, directing traffic. So they sent us out there and just get out there in the street and direct traffic. Well, okay, but at that time they still had the streetcars. So sometimes the streetcars we'd be in the middle of the street, and the streetcars would pass right next to you, and the cars would be going by there. But that's what they had, just traffic officers. Mm-hmm. But that was short-lived because my wife at that time was working with a Catholic youth organization, and she was a secretary. There was a captain that was on the board of directors of the Catholic youth. So he knew about her husband being I wasn't married. He was married? No, I was married. No, I wasn't married. Wait, I can't forget.
That's okay.
Anyway, we got married in June. Yeah. No, we weren't married yet. That happened soon after I got married. That he knew that her husband was a policeman, so he knew that what neighborhood I was. That's where he was, in Hollenbeck Division, which is in Boyle Heights. Mm-hmm. So there was a call from his office, and I talked to him, and he says, "I'd like to talk to you. Come on down to my office." So I went over there to his office, and he asked me, "How would you like to come and work over here? I'd like to have you here because you know the neighborhood, and I have an idea of putting a police officer on the beat on Whittier Boulevard, which is the main boulevard going through East LA, going through Boyle Heights." I said, "Sure, that'd be good." So he had me transferred over to Hollenbeck Division, mm-hmm. And I started walking a beat, which was unusual in the neighborhood. They had foot beats downtown LA all the time, but this was in a neighborhood. But at that time, little gang was starting up, and I guess he wanted to. And I knew the area. I knew some of the guys too from the little gang, and so that's what I did for a while, and that's how I got to work on the beat there and join that division. Well, during this time, a friend of mine who was also in the police department and had been in the Army, he had joined the National Guard. And so he talked to me about it. Hey, you know, I belong to the Guard now, and it's pretty good. You get $30 a month, and we have to go once a week. Once a year, you go for training for 2 weeks, but the city pays you. And we go to the meetings at the training center for once a week, and that's $30 a month. So I told my wife about it, if it was okay to join, and she says, well, I guess so. I said, hey, with $30 a month, we can pay off the loan on not the loan, but pay off the vacuum cleaner we bought on time. And so I joined.
And what year was that?
That was in 40, I got married. I was married already. Well, that was in 49. Yeah, the war started in 50. The Korean War started in 50. Mm-hmm. So I joined the Guard, and it was only a matter of a few months, actually, that the war started in 1950. And so we really didn't do a lot of training, because then the California National Guard was put under the Army, put under the Army. Well, it is already, but I guess on the President's order. And so they were mobilized. So then I had to leave. I had to leave home. We all did. And we were sent from LA to Camp Cook, California, which is now Vandenberg Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. It was an Army camp during the World War II, Camp Cook. They trained armored, I think, tanks and regular Army stuff. But now it's at Vandenberg. So that's where we were sent, and we were the beginning of the troops that were here in California. And in the meantime, the fellows that were being drafted throughout the United States were sent to Camp Cook to have a full complement of a division, 40th Division. Where's that patch here? 40th Division. Is that here? No. This one, California. That's the California National Guard, 40th Division. Mm-hmm. And so we trained there for nothing less than a year, but I was able to come home a few times because I didn't have a car, but a friend had a car there, and he was married also, so we would, as soon as Friday afternoon came along, if we had to get a pass, we drive to LA and then go back there and arrive back at camp Monday morning at 4 or 5 in the morning, just ready to get dressed and start training again. So my wife, when I went to we had a little apartment, a little duplex living, but when I was called to the National Guard, she went to live with her parents. And then we had a little daughter. She was my daughter was a year old, my first daughter, and I went in September of 1950, that's what it was. So her mother helped her a lot with the baby, and then after we trained here in California, we were sent to Japan, back again to that camp in Sendai, same camp where I was in World War II. Wow. And it was an established camp. Other troops had been there. What rank were you at this point? A big one? What rank were you when you were in Korea? I was a sergeant. It was a medical aid man. And I told my friend, I don't know anything about medical. When I first joined, mm-hmm. when he wanted me to join, I said, I don't know anything about medical. He said, you don't have to. He says, there's guys that are coming in here, they're students, they're going to college, or they want to be in the medical field. And we're going to train them and stuff about the Army and that kind of stuff, the military stuff. So where did you get your training to be a medic? Was that when you were doing the National Guard? When you became a medic? Oh yeah, I was a medic. Yeah, I learned a little. We had a doctor he was our commanding officer. He was a major, mm-hmm. and he was a captain first, then a major. But
Was this at Camp Cook?
He was a doctor in the 40th Division.
Mm-hmm.
So we had training classes that the other our captain would put on classes, or they'd bring in other. But it was basic first aid, really, what we had to learn.
Uh-huh.
Field first aid.
And how much training, I mean, how long was your training for medic?
The training we were there in Camp Cook for about 9 months or so or more, and because we had rookies from all over the state. Well, a lot of them came from Ohio, and there's a mixture of guys from different parts of the country, but a lot of them from back east, and they filled up and made the whole division up to strength. So guys were training in other parts of it. Ours was medical, but it's basically first aid.
Uh-huh.
Splinting, stopping bleeding. We had a clinic, not a clinic, but what they call, well, if somebody got sick, they'd go to the medics, and there'd be one of the doctors there. But if he had a cut, or we could be treated by the
medic.
The guys, the medics. And it was strictly first aid thing, but we had to get them up to training them physically. Also, we had physical training so they could be. We'd go on hikes and camp out at when the troops that they belong to, that is the units that they belong to, they would go out on training sessions. They always had a few medics with them. And I was in headquarters, so I stayed with the big guns. We had cannons, the big, long tom rifles, guns. I mean, that's what I was in, an artillery unit. This was the 40th Division the 40th Division had infantry guys, but they also had artillery, and so we were assigned to the artillery. So we trained there, and then we were sent to Japan. We went to Japan to this. Turned out to be the same base where I was before, and still training some more there, and then we went to Korea from there, and that was 45. I'm not too sure of the date, but at that time when we got to Korea, they had already had this ceasefire. Remember that? They had the 38th parallel, they stopped everything, and while they started having negotiations for a peace treaty of some kind, but they still were on the line. The North Koreans were on one side, and the Americans, not only Americans, but they had the other countries were fighting for the League of Nations, were troops, other countries. So we got there, and we replaced another division. So they left. The guys, the bodies left, but they left all their equipment there. They had the trenches. They were dug in. Where were living in their barracks. I mean, we lived in tents, but the tents were buried about 4 feet underground. Not underground, but they had dug pits. At least about not more than 4 feet, about 5 feet. And the tent was covering the hole, and then we stepped down, you walk down the little stairs, and you had our cots there and bunks. In case of artillery shelling, at least you'd have some protection. If you had a direct hit, you wouldn't help you, but we didn't have to. The Army group that was there, or the division, they left. But they left everything behind, and we just filled in. But the ceasefire. But the guys that were on the front lines, they had little skirmishes, and we lost a couple of guys in the very beginning. They had to be on patrol, or somebody was out there sneaking around and opened fire, and they killed one of our medics, actually.
Oh, wow.
But it was sporadic. It wasn't a full combat, but you had to be alert. And our group, the headquarters artillery, we were further back because they had the big guns that shoot 20 miles out there, so we were way back. But everything was there, left by this other army group. But I wasn't there too long, actually, because my mother had a kidney operation. She's been sick a long time, and she had a surgery. And one day they called us out. They called me out from the field and go to the office, and there was orders to. I had gotten a emergency furlough because my mother was in the hospital, had surgery, and they were afraid she wasn't going to make it. So they said, "Get your stuff. You're leaving." So I didn't even have a chance to say goodbye to the other guys or my friends, and I had to leave that afternoon. I got my stuff together, and they flew me out of there in a small plane, which is a single engine little Piper Cub, which they use for observation by the artillery, spotting. They'd fly up there and see where the shells were falling and where the enemy was. So they flew me in one of those to the coast of Korea. I don't even know where it was, but then a plane flew me to Tokyo, Japan, the next morning, and then from there in Tokyo, it was all arranged. I took a commercial airliner. I forget what airline it was, but it was a regular passenger aircraft. And we flew to the northern route. We flew to Anchorage, Alaska, refueled there, and then flew into Seattle. And I had so they tried the Red Cross, by the way, the Red Cross was there trying to get me going home. Well, we made up with them. I had met a friend, a guy from my unit. He was going home too. Somebody was sick in his family. And they tried to get us a military flight from Seattle to LA area. But there was nothing around. You know, I flew one time in a Navy fighter plane from when I was coming home from Fort Benning to California. Well, I got from Alabama I flew to Arizona on the back of a Navy fighter plane because they were just delivering it. Then from there I took the train. So they couldn't find anything for us to fly, so we had to go on the train. The Red Cross came through. And I didn't have any money either. We had, Japanese currency over there. Japanese. So I took out a loan with the Red Cross, $50. So I remember that. And so we got on the train. It took us a day and a half to get home. And then I never saw that guy again, but I paid back the Red Cross. So anyway, thank the Lord that my mother came through the operation, and she lived a few more years after that. And so I was reunited with my family and my wife, and that's the end of my service. I had 30-day leave. He told me report to Camp Roberts. So after the 30 days, I reported to Camp Roberts here in California, and they looked at the orders. They said, "Okay," he says, "You guys are set. The guys are set to come back because it's a 2-year tour of duty on the National Guard under federal law." So it was only had a few months to go, 3 or 4 months. Just go home, go and wait. When they come back, you report to them. Okay. I stayed overnight there at Camp Roberts and came home. So I was already on the department. I had gotten a leave of absence from them. So I went back to work in the police department.
Oh, okay.
And
what year was that?
Well, that was in September. My time was up in September, but I came back in about July or August.
Okay.
I only had to wait about a month or two. They came back. The whole 40 came back. So I went back to work and in the police office. Then this same captain that had helped me out before, he was at that time then in charge of the juvenile officers, juvenile division. So I went to see him because all the policemen that had been called into the service and had not served in the jail as a jailer, because the LAPD had a jail at Lincoln Heights. They called Lincoln Heights. in L.A., and they were jailers, misdemeanor arrestees. Any policeman that had not served in the jail was being sent there, no matter where you had been before, unless you were some specialist. So that's where I would have gone. But I saw this captain, and he said, "Oh, I want to get you in here in juvenile." So I had my career as a juvenile officer for 22 years or so.
Wow.
As a juvenile officer. I did another detective, but I never had to go back in the uniform.
Okay. So when did you retire?
When did I retire? In 1975.
Okay.
I served 25 years in the police department.
Wow.
And
how many children did you have?
I had 8 children.
And how many grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
And 18 grandchildren.
Wow.
And 1 grandchild right now. No great-grandkids.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a good family. They're all living out of the house now. One of my sons lives down the street from me. He's single, so he's my caretaker, you might say. But I have a grandson living with me. The second one. One lived before me for a while, went on. Then there's one there right now, but he's looking for an apartment. I said I'll take him in. I'll take you in while you're till you get your apartment. But at one time in the police department, I was a sergeant, and then a younger brother joined, and then he became a sergeant. And after that, a third brother joined, and he became a sergeant. And this is a picture here that this was in August of '69. The one in the middle is a new sergeant. And I'm on your left, and this other brother's Gilbert, he's on the right. This was the only 3-brother sergeant combination on the department at that time.
Oh, wow.
I think there's probably been others later on, but that was quite extraordinary, I guess, a little out of the ordinary. And this picture was in 1969. This picture here, I was still a plain officer. My mother was selected by an organization from Olvera Street. She was selected as a Mexican Mother of the Year, and she had 10 sons, and this is a picture that came out in our police magazine,
Wow.
The Beat magazine, and I was still an officer at that time. But then here's a picture of my family. No, you can't see the family, but we went on a cruise after my wife had passed away. This was in July of '03. I paid for all their fares to get we went on a 4-day cruise out of Long Beach.
Oh, wow.
And that was a lot of fun with them, with the family. Okay. Let's see what else I have here. I'll tell you about my career, about my dad. My dad started working in the movies in the 20s. And here's a picture, this is a picture of him. He's the guy on the ground fighting with that Indian guy.
Okay.
Who is my uncle. And this is the early movies as an extra. And he did little extra roles all his life, and that's how he supported the family.
Wow.
So, let's see, this is the era, maybe 1928, something like that. I was, after I was married, raising kids, I usually had to work, I was working extra jobs all the time, trying to support them. The department pays well, and then I worked, sometimes I'd work extra jobs you hire out as a policeman, work a dance, security, or something like that, but I worked as a truck driver with a company on my vacation days. Well, I would get 2 weeks vacation. I'd work a week with this trucking company delivering, and then we'd go on a week's vacation with the family in the early years. But I pretty much through the years, I always worked extra because you needed extra income for the supporting the family. And my one of the kids would say, "How come we always have to go to the what do they call that? We used to go Sears Roebuck in East LA had a building. Well, there's a store, Sears Roebuck. The building is still there, but downstairs they had the catalog stuff that came out of the catalog that was not going to be used anymore. And my wife and I would go there, or I'd go by myself sometimes and shop for the kids' clothes because they were marked down out of the catalog. And the kids would say, "How come we always have to get these clothes from the catalog? Why can't we have other things like other kids do?" Like, well, I'm sorry, kid.
You got clothes on your back, be lucky.
Yes.
You have a flag you wanted to show us as well.
What was that? Oh, the flag. Yeah. Okay. This flag, I'm not sure. There's symbolic with the Japanese. It's a battle flag, I guess they might call it. But my brother Joe, older brother, who died after the war, found this or got it in Saipan. And my understanding is that it is signed by friends and family members of the soldier, and they got messages on there which I don't know what they say, but I'm sure it's wishing them safe journey, good luck, and be safe, and all that kind of thing, or love. And I don't know the story about it because she never told us, but he had it among his belongings after he passed away. His wife had it, but she gave it to me. And it was common, I know, that the soldiers carry these around. After the war, as the kids grew up, little by little, I had a little more time to get involved with in the community. I was a volunteer. I worked for the St. Vincent de Paul Society for a long time out of St. Mary's Church here in Whittier. I've been in Whittier for 60 years. We moved there in 53. I must say that when we first wanted to move out here, they were building homes along Whittier Boulevard. Anyway, along Whittier Boulevard, and we went to see some tracks, new tracks that were going up by Whittier Boulevard, just past Painter. So we found a house, and I was working in the police department then, and we liked it, so we signed up to buy a house. And a couple of weeks later, we got a notice from the builders or whoever that was, and said, "We're sorry that you don't qualify." So I showed, we read the letter and said, "Well, I wonder why." But I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff anymore. So I said, "I guess we don't qualify. I'm just new on the police department. We were earning $200 a month." But so then I told my friend that lived here in Whittier, this other fellow that was with me in the National Guard, that they had turned us down. He said, "Oh, you know what? I got a friend. He lived here in Whittier, up there by Beverly and Broadway, or not Beverly, Beverly and anyway, up there by the fountain." But he was a Mexican American, but very light complected, and he was his wife was Anglo, and he bought a house up there. So he said, I know a realtor in Whittier. He could help you." So I went to the realtor. We went to the realtor, and they found a house for us where I live now. I'm still there. I moved there in 1963, and my third child was born there. But later, I realized that, or came to understand that they weren't selling to Latinos or Mexican Americans here in Whittier at that time. Same thing had happened in Montebello and other cities, Downey, but I had never suffered discrimination of any kind that I knew of. I mean, that I was aware of. But it was there, but we found a house with a realtor, and I've been in that house ever since. It was a nice little cul-de-sac, very happy there, raised the kids. That time you could play on the street, hardly any cars, you know. But I did some other volunteer work. I worked for the, not worked, but I volunteered with the Pio Pico House. Here's a picture of me in my my outfit that I put together to be a docent there on Pio Pico. And I did that for a few years and then finally retired from that.
Uh-huh.
That was pretty neat. The place is nice. If you've ever been there, you got to take a visit. It's interesting to see there, because the state owns it. They fixed it up. They rebuilt they made adobe bricks, but with steel reinforcement, the walls, and they fixed it up like it was. And they still have tours there. I'm sure they still have the tours. I haven't been by there lately. We had a club of Latino police officers that we started on the police department when they had these the riots in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I remember now in 1943, June of 43, when I went into the service, I was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. It was when they had some, what they call the riots, Pachuco riots, with the young Mexican American kids wearing the zoot suit outfits.
Right.
And they got into fights with the servicemen downtown LA, and that kind of thing went on. But I was already in camp, so there was problems, but I don't see that anymore now at all. Like I said, I've never had any problem with discrimination that I became aware of. That whatever reason it was, that not getting that house, we just forgot about it, and
Wasn't meant to be.
that's right. And we're happy. I think it's better we're off where we were, because we're in a cul-de-sac and it's safe, and the kids could play in the street, and it's close to. I worked in LA all the time, so I was close to LA.
Mm-hmm. In closing, is there something you want to say about your service or your experiences and how that's helped your life and the life experiences you had? To your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, if you have them, is there something you'd like to say?
Sure. Well, I don't know if there's a way to place it or name it or identify it, but some way or somehow I have been very fortunate in my life. I cannot explain it. I tell people, and some people might say, oh, no, nothing. I pray that the Lord has protected me all these years. First of all, we had great parents. They raised us as Catholics, although kids are not my kids aren't Catholics. Some of them, they're Christian, but they raised us as Catholic. Our life was around the church, centered around the church. And so with the teachings of the church of the commandments, honesty, no stealing, and all the commandments, not only that, but respecting other people. They taught us a lot of respect for others. When people would come to visit the house at our house when we were kids, at that time we used to wear caps all the time. Pretty much the kids did, the 20s and the 30s. And if somebody was visiting, they'd call you in. This is my friend so and so. And you take off your cap and you then give them your hand, and so shake hands and okay, go out and play now. But we had good training from our parents. And I don't know how they managed it with 10 kids, but they were strict. We got spanked now and then. I'll tell you a story about that. But this football player had to do some jail time, I think, for whipping his kid with a branch. The 40th, when my parents had their 40th anniversary, they had it at a little hall, and they had a luncheon, and people were there, guests and all that. And then my dad got up and he said, "Oh, I'm very proud and happy and very fortunate to have. I had 10 sons, and they're all good boys, and they were very obedient, and I never had to punish them. I never had to hit them or beat them, or he didn't say beat them, but I never had to punish them." So one of my younger brother, he he tells the other brother, well, who was that man that used to whip us with a strap? But we did. We had good upbringing that we relate to the church and the influence of the neighbors that, for the most part, they had their problems, but they were family oriented. And then speaking about myself, I was fortunate to have this good training. I got this job with the police, and I went to the war twice.
Right.
I was never in harm's way, never. And some friends, and even my own brother was killed. The other brother suffered from the ill effects of the war, of being on the islands, and some came back injured, wounded. That never happened to me. I raised my kids. They're all, well educated for the most part. They're professionals. I have two sons. One son's, well, I'll start with my oldest daughter. She was a RN, but now they have a travel business, her and her husband. Mm-hmm. My first son went to the Vietnam War. He was in he didn't go in Vietnam, but he was in the service. But he became a fire captain for the LA County. He just retired a month ago. The next one is a daughter. She worked for the city schools in Lompoc, and she retired just a few months ago. And the next one, David, he was a police officer with San Bernardino, and then with Riverside, transferred in, and then there was an opening in Palm Springs, the chief of police. He applied, and he was chief of police for Palm Springs for about 3 years, and he retired there about 3 or 4 years ago. Another son he tells his brothers, well, I didn't go to college and I didn't have a fancy job, he said, but I work for UPS and I earn a good pension, more than you guys do, which is that's the one that lives by me. He worked for UPS and he's got a good pension. Another daughter, the next daughter after him, she's an RN, still working, raise a family. Mm-hmm. And then another younger brother, he's a captain, lives in Riverside. He's a captain with the LA City Fire Department. Mm-hmm. And the youngest son is a fisheries biologist. He lives in Washington, state of Washington. Wow. Okay. So, and they raise a family, And so those are the blessings that have come to me and my wife, and that's what I thank the Lord every day for these blessings that He has given me. He kept me out of harm. I didn't have any problems in the police department. I was never in any. I had struggles, but mm-hmm. Nothing like being involved in a riot or a shootout, nothing like that. And my health, I've had some medical problems, but and I had 50 years of marriage is another blessing. Mm-hmm. So all that, I'm thankful to the Lord. That's the only thing I can put it. Right. Out of harm's way, and I'm still hanging out.
And you're still here. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your service, the story, your service not only while you were in the military, but also outside of the military, and raising such a wonderful family. So again, on behalf of the Library of Congress and the American Folklore Center, we want to thank you.
You're welcome. I'm very blessed, very, very happy to have been here and be able to tell my story as much as I remember.
Okay. Thank you.